Hello, everyone, and welcome to Event Icons. I'm Brandt Krueger. We're going to be joined shortly by the rest of the hosts of Event Icons. We've got Will, the future speed reader, competitor, and hoarder of apps and cats. We've got Alex, the dude who can tweet faster than he can talk. Tahira, she will make your event feel like a backyard birthday party. And you know me, I can fix your computer real good, but then make you feel bad about opening your email. We're going to be talking about 3 years of Event Icons coming up right next.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of #EventIcons, presented by Endless Events, the show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Use the question panel on the webinar to submit your questions. Or you can hop on Twitter. Submit your questions with #EventIcons. We'll be answering your questions live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better conversation we can have. So please help share #EventIcons on Twitter and Facebook. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com. Now, without any further delay, this is #EventIcons.
All right, everybody, 3 years ago, Mr. Will Curran wanted to find a way to stand out in a crowded space, doing what he loves best, talking to people. Just as important to Will was thinking about how to develop and deliver meaningful content for event professionals by event professionals in an engaging format, while Event Icons has been through iterations of delivery as the platforms available have changed. The premise, the core, that we can and should learn from each other has never changed. In this episode, we're going to take a look back at 3 years of learning, great guests, hosts that have made the show what it is today, and a sneak peek of what's to come. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
What's up, Brandt?
How's that for my usual cold read? Didn't think to read that before we started the show.
You're amazing, Brandt.
That's why we always make you do it.
Well, thanks. Will, you're coming in from San Francisco today, is that right?
Yeah, in San Francisco, got a little bit of a cold, so hopefully everyone bears with me.
It does, and it also sounds like your thing just pitch shifted again. So now you've got the extra deep voice going. We've had some struggles with some of the recording gear that for some reason, whatever reason, it makes us sound super deep voices. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Tahira, you're coming to us live from like 11 hours from now. Is that right?
That's right. Live from 11 hours from
11 hours in the past.
That's right. That's right. Sorry, it's not the future, it's the past.
The only time zone that is actually behind my home time zone. So I'm usually in the last time zone. Now I'm in the last time zone. So very exciting.
And are you able to share where that secret location is?
I am in Hawaii, and I am very close to the lovely area where I actually spoke at an FICP in 2015.
Nice.
Right in the Hilton. So yes, very close. Lovely. Happy to be here.
And Alex, you're in home base, right?
I'm at home base outside of Washington, D.C., which shut down today.
Yeah, I heard there was some things going on around there, yeah.
Yeah.
Lion State and such. And I'm coming from cold and snowy Minnesota. And so, Will, it's been 3 years.
3 years
of Event Icon is really hard. I'm gonna have a hard time taking Barry White Will.
I got the Barry Manilow voice now, don't I?
Oh man, it's
well, it's great. It's great because Will prefaced that he's sick. So as far as we know, this is just his sick voice.
Right. It's just his sick voice. When Will has a cold, it suddenly turns his voice like this.
And then all of a sudden, I can sing very beautifully.
Yeah, you know what? Could you do like a monster truck ad?
Well, welcome everyone to the Monster Truck Rally 2018 here on Event Icons.
All right.
Watch some corn dogs and watch stuff blow up. Boom, Event Icons.
$5 buys you a whole seat, but you'll only need the edge. Yes, I grew up in the Midwest. So Will, what made you start Event Icons back in the day? I kind of touched on it in the opener there, but what really kind of made you get it going?
Yeah, I think we'll link down to it below in the resources, but I think there's the episode where Sean interviews me back, like when we were running out of guests. So he said, why don't we interview Will? Because he hasn't been a guest on the show yet. But long story short, it was my chance to play around with Blab, which is the platform that does essentially what we're doing here for panel chat, chat on the side, ask me anything style kind of conversations. And so it was my chance to experiment. It was a little bit of that mixed with the selfish desire to talk to everyone in the events industry. I mean, there's something interesting about when you host a podcast called EventIcons, you naturally self-label yourself as an icon. But, I was doing content and I was making a name for myself, I think in the AV space and slightly in the event space, but this podcast definitely pushed me to the forefront. So I think getting to interview awesome people, which all these guys I've had on the show before they were hosts, it was my chance to kind of like break in and start a conversation with people. And it's really cool because all the time we get to talk to people we never thought we'd have on the show. And there's some, even today we're talking, we can't talk about who we're trying to get on the show, but someone who is a dream, an icon that I've looked up to since I was in high school. We're looking at having him on a show. And I think that's one of the reasons why. And then also, what ended up coming is that became your guys' chance as the audience to ask the questions as well. So my selfish desire became your guys' selfish desire, I think, as well.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, I want to ask a question. I want to know what goes on behind the scenes, because I know when I came on as a host, I was like, wow, there's a lot of people back there. So, well, can you tell us a little bit about, as the show's grown and evolved, about some of the people we don't see live? Who's back there supporting all those details, making sure that guests come on and everything works, scheduling, social media? How do you make this delivery happen?
So I'm gonna talk about you guys since you can't talk about yourselves, but these guys all up on here do a lot of the work on here. So I'll start with Tahira, then we can switch it up and someone else can talk about someone else on the team. But Tahira, as she this way, is talking about one thing that you guys don't know is all the descriptions that get written before all the shows describing what you're going to get yourself into, and that goes to the social team who publishes everything. That's all written by Tahira. Tahira writes almost all the pre-bank questions that we fall back upon when the audience isn't asking questions or just kind of the questions that get started. So that's all done by Tahira. So Tahira is really good about asking really hard questions. So we basically put her in charge of that. So that's a big one. And then I'll do another one and then let you guys talk about some people. But another team that you don't see is the whole social team. So basically every time we have an episode, obviously graphics get created to promote all of them. Those are done by the graphics team. Then they also all the shows get turned into short clips and images and quote images that gets done by the graphics team plus the social team. And then there's just a huge amount of people, I think, in the background. But Alex, who are some of the people that you kind of work with on the show on a daily basis?
So one kind of unsung hero for us. Sometimes I feel like the guests don't really realize how far in advance we plan these episodes, but we have this stuff scheduled out sometimes 6 months in advance of when someone's going to be on the show, and that's in large part to Rokon, who's behind the scenes, who touches with all of our guests, invites them to the show. We come up with some ideas, but then we shoot him their information. He reaches out to them. Sometimes we do an introductory email. But as far as scheduling and making sure that they actually show up on show day, that's all him. Without him, there is no EventIcons. And I think that's really important to recognize that, this is not a 4-person team. We do have a lot of people in the background who do all of this stuff that seems trivial and a little bit mundane, but without it, there's no show.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Rokon's works so hard, and literally, this is his main project is just scheduling and wrangling everybody. And we, as the people who were in the industry, we're constantly trying to come up with topic ideas. Obviously, you as attendees also give us ideas, and then obviously other guests give us ideas. We're constantly coming up with ideas, but to be honest, if we're just the idea people, but Rokon actually gets it done. That man sends so many emails; it is unbelievable. And I think another really big part of the team that you don't see as well. Well, in the behind the scenes is Brandt actually is working a lot in the behind the scenes as well. We're moving, and we'll talk about the future is working towards building out some partnerships as well. For example, on site at events, but also with various companies as well. So I don't know, Brandt, if you wanted to talk about that at all.
Well, it's all still pretty hush hush at this point, but we're definitely working on it. It was one of the things that when I first came over to the show, that I wanted to try and make a priority. And as we've often said, actually, as we've been approaching people in partnerships, the blessing and the curse of EventIcons is the fact that we're all active in the industry, and so as a result, sometimes it gets a little difficult to get our day-to-day work done, as well as getting our EventIcons work done, leading up to things. And so that project has been, we've been slowly picking away at it. And now we're starting to pick up some speed and actually have some good leads on people that we're excited about potentially partnering with as we look into 2019. So yeah, nothing we can talk about yet, but we've got some big ideas on bringing some folks that we can work together over the course of the last year. And so now I'm going to turn it around onto Alex. So Alex, as many of you know, owns Little Bird Told Media and is the social guru of the events industry. I don't use that word lightly. I am not a fan of the word guru. In fact, I really hate it when people use that on themselves. But I don't think I've ever heard you, Alex, refer to yourself as a guru. So
I don't.
Yeah, good for you. Good on you. So Alex, what I would love if you could kind of tell folks the evolution of how you kind of came into the show and how you transitioned into being more of a full-time host over the course of the last year. So a little bit of how that came to be.
Yeah, so it's funny because Will mentions the platform Blab, which no longer exists, that did a similar type of thing as this, serves the same purpose. And before I started Little Bird Told Media, I had my own show on Blab. I was director of marketing for a company, and I was doing a similar thing as Will. And so there were probably about 4 or 5 of us in the events industry trying out Blab, interviewing people, and I started watching the other people's shows, and that's actually how I got to know Will, was by watching the show. I had never met him in person. And then I left the company I was with to start Little Bird Told Media, and I stayed in touch with Will, and I continued watching the show, even as it moved away from Blab. And probably around, I would say, as it was getting close to being a year old, the show, is when I finally got to meet Will at IMEX America. This was 2 years ago, and I got to be a guest on the show for, a quick 5-10 minutes. And but I was behind the scenes kind of live tweeting it, the show. And afterwards, Will and I got to talking, and he was like, would you consider live tweeting all the shows? Like, you're already watching them anyway every week. You do live tweet them from your own account. Would you consider live tweeting them for us? And anyone who knows me knows that when I live tweet, I get everything that is said. And it's a lot. And so I started out just being behind the scenes. I'd say hi before the show started, meet the guests, get their social media stuff. And then I'd live tweet the show. And it was probably about 6 months in or so. And at this point, Brandt had come on as a co-host as well. And both Brandt and Will were unable to do a show. And knowing that I had done this show before myself, they were like, do you think you could host the show this week and not live tweet it? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. That's fine. I don't think either of you even realized that I had been doing my own show before. I think you guys were just like, hopefully Alex doesn't suck.
I hope he can handle it, this guy, this Mr. Social.
Hopefully he is okay being in front of a screen. And so, I did it for that show. It was well received. I enjoyed doing it. And over the next few months, I periodically would come on and kind of guest host and co-host the show. And eventually it got to the point where Will was like, "You're pretty good at this. Can you just come on as a co-host?" And I was like, "Well, who's gonna do the social media?" And so, Will has a social team with his company, and they've taken on a lot of that role. On occasion, I still moonlight and will live tweet a show when there's 3 of us who are available to co-host. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to live tweet this one. But sometimes those are my favorite episodes, is when I'm behind the scenes live tweeting, because I really get to pay attention to what everyone's saying, and I don't have to think about hosting the show. I'm just able to be really an attendee watching the show. But, in regards to how it's kind of evolved with the social for the show, I still correspond with the people who are in charge of social. I'll give them tips and hints, things that I would do. And so, no one tweets as fast as me, and that's okay.
No one.
You are, man.
But we really try and focus now on not getting every word out, but getting the important takeaways to get onto social. And now with things like Instagram stories and YouTube, where we can post clips and things, we don't have to live tweet everything. So I have had less to do with social and more to do with the show, which is great. I love it. But yeah, it really has been kind of this evolution, which is exciting.
But I think it's really important, actually, to just, all the things we're talking about, we're saying, this is what happens on this show, but the reality is that these are things that can apply to any event or almost anybody who's trying to launch a podcast. This is I feel like this is just tons of good advice for people. So it's, which is great, because it's really 3 years of lessons learned.
A podcast is a weekly event that you get to do from your basement.
Or
your basement, at least. Or your bedroom.
Or hotel rooms.
Or living room. Or someone else's living room.
Or Lanai.
But no, and I think it's interesting. I think it's worth noting also that the show has evolved. Different co-hosts have come and gone. Some of us have been around for a while. I think now I've been with the show a little over 2 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
But the show has evolved. It's changed. There's different dynamics with the co-hosts. Will has been a staple the whole time, but Will can't do it alone. There's lots of episodes where Will's not around. He's on the road. We all have our own businesses. We're all constantly moving and traveling. Most of us are speakers who will be on site speaking at a conference. And so it's nice to have that backup.
I must admit, I think this year I probably hosted the least amount of shows. I didn't probably compare that stat, but I probably hosted the least amount of shows compared to usual because you guys really took the reins this year and really rocked it. So definitely a huge props to you guys on that end. So thank you. Hooray. All right. So what are we talking about next? Should we talk about Tahira? I think we should talk about Tahira because she's new. Tahira, you joined the team late last year. And so this is your first full year.
That is my first full year, where I was basically, at the beginning of the year, I was super busy and in meetings all the time and barely made a show. And then at the end of the year, I was traveling and barely made a show. But I did a lot of great, like getting up at 4 a.m. to do a show from Bali or, being like, the door's closed. We're in a very important meeting at the office and see you at 3. It's always been really fun. But no, what I love about podcasts is the opportunity to talk to people, and we get to do that, which is really cool.
While we're still on the subject of co-hosts, I think it's important to mention the fact that there is one of our co-hosts who is not here right now, and we just want to kind of talk about that for just a real quick second. And that is Audrey Galleon, who I love and adore, and who has been a co-host of mine for on a couple different shows for a couple different years. And we just wanted to let everybody know that she got promoted in her job, for anybody that didn't know about that already, and has had this really amazing year so far. But unfortunately, what it's meant is she hasn't had as much time as she would have liked and as we would have loved to be here on the show. We love what she's brought to the show, but unfortunately, it's just looking like she just doesn't really have the time to be on very often. So she's got this amazing opportunity, and we want to wish her nothing but the best. But she has agreed that she's going to still stick around and be a guest host from time to time, and obviously be on the shows where we think she would really provide her unique voice and value on the shows as often as possible. So just wanted to address the fact that we are a host short at the moment. We've got some ideas of who we would think we'd like to bring in. We're going to keep the lid on that as well while we work through that process. But we love Audrey. We wish her nothing but the best, and we've so enjoyed having her on the show as she moves on in her career with Catalyst.
Absolutely. And we love you, Audrey. Thank you so much for being an awesome host. And as you guys know, over the history of the company, or the history of the company, I call it like a company, it basically is a little mini company, but the history of the podcast, hosts come and go. And we'll always remember our amazing hosts. So thank you, Audrey, for all your awesome work on the podcast for sure. So stay tuned for the future of what that looks like as well. So let's jump into start talking about some of our favorite episodes, I think, for the year. And this always ends up being a great episode. If you haven't been able to catch every episode or maybe missed one, for you to find out exactly which ones you need to be checking out. So, I'm going to let you guys lead this conversation because all of these episodes are my favorite episodes. But why don't we just kind of go down the line as far as maybe our top episode of the year, why it was our favorite, and, maybe some takeaways that we've gotten from each one. So I'm going to kick it over to Brandt to go talk about his favorite episodes so far this year.
Well, first of all, you're killing me because I listed 5. So to come up with the top is going to be hard. So I'll just try and be really brief and just highlight some of the ones that I really liked. Kind of going from most recent to further back. I really enjoyed one of our more recent episodes on making events more theatrical. I'm an old theater nerd, and I could have done that episode for about 4 hours straight. There's so much that these disciplines can learn from each other, so much, which is why I think we see so many event people coming from the theater industry. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about that conversation was talking about a very theatrical concept and gravitating towards lighting in our events, because lighting is one of those things that's really pretty cheap these days. It doesn't cost that much compared to, gazillion K lumen projectors and, all of the money that we spend on sets and props and things like that. So, the amazing things that you can do with simple lighting. Our virtual reality show, I thought was a great episode about, opening my mind with what you can do with VR in more open spaces, moving through a space, reconfiguring a space on the fly, and really rotating things through when it comes to using VR and events in more of a group setting. Our diversity part 2 episode, the quote that I pulled out of there from Audrey, who again rocked it on that episode, is diversity is about pulling out the uniqueness of every single individual. I just absolutely loved that quote from that episode about, a really kind of special way to think about diversity as opposed to just ticking the boxes, which I know is a hot button for her. Our kind of combo efforts of staying healthy, episode 96. Sorry, diversity was 101. Virtual reality is episode 105. Staying healthy with Tracy Stuckbreath was 96, and I forget who co-hosted on that. I don't have it handy. Talking about turning off the electronics at night, making sure that you turn off the gear in the evening and really start to wind down. And we covered that as well on Will and I's episode 109, how to get things done on the road, making sure that you don't work too late into the night so that you can get up for that 5 a.m. call time when you have to be there, or 4 a.m. call when you're in Hawaii. So those are the kind of the highlights for me. Staying healthy, getting things done. I've loved that we're starting to look into kind of the back end of how we as event profs stay healthy, stay mentally fit. I'd love to see, and this is tipping our hat towards, what maybe we can see in the future. I'd love to see some more maybe business oriented things like small business, staying organized, that kind of thing as we move forward in the future.
I have a feeling that'll be a topic in the next 2019.
It might be. So there we go. Staying healthy on the road, diversity, virtual reality, and how to make your events more theatrical were some of the ones that jumped on me. It was a good year. It was a hard year to choose.
That's a good one. Just so everyone knows, by the way, you're missing out if you're not watching this live because I'm posting all the links to them, so you can literally click on them, bookmark them, and come back and watch them later. So
that's right. Don't forget to drop your questions in there too.
Yes, join the chat and ask us the questions. Tahira, let's hear your top favorite episodes of the year. I know, as Brandt said, there are so many to pick from. We've had a good year.
There are. So I thought that the episode, the first one that Brandt said, making your events more theatrical, also stellar, and really, really great guests on that one who with so much experience that they were able to bring with Kevin Molesworth and Brittany Lanny and Sarah Cisna, and really different perspectives, which I thought was really fun. And tons of good information around how we really, I believe, really need to be thinking about how do we do a better job of telling stories through events and creating those narrative arcs and some of those things that are really important that we don't always do as well as we could. So it's fun to get some other ideas on how to do that really well. I loved live shows. So even though they were very long, just the energy that you get from seeing people come and show up at your booth and come in and have conversations with us about what's happening in the industry, just in that real time, which you did at ILEA, and then again, we all did at Connect and IMAX. So fantastic, and so many different people. And I love that I finally met Kate Pate live. So after being Facebook friends for basically a decade, I think.
That was an amazing moment, I must say. Like I said, because you sit there and you assume we all know each other and this and that. And Alex loves to make fun of me when I don't know people. So I know how this felt to be on the opposite end of this. And I was like, you guys were standing right next to each other, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, and blah blah. And I was like, wait, why aren't you guys talking to each other? And I was like, and I was like, you guys know each other, right? They're like, no, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then it was an immediate hug because it was just so awesome. So, and that's part of, that's also why we do things live. And I think that, a lot of the guests that we have, some of us might know one or two of the guests, some of us have never met. One of my other favorite things, I loved the show that we did on esports. And what was even better was that the three guests we had on that show co-presented at Event Tech Live. And they had never met. The three of them had never met before. Like, how cool is that? That they came onto our show, we introduced them, and now they're totally out there rocking the industry with really great perspectives. So those would be kind of my top ones. I had a couple of things that I really liked. From IMAX, Michael Doan said, people are going to want to engage with exhibitors if you position them as thought leaders. I think we really struggle with, walking through shows and bringing buyers in, and people are just like, oh, they're just there to sell to me. And the reality is a lot of the time, the people that are being sent to the shows are the people who are some of the smartest in their organizations and who really understand their products and also have really worked hard to understand the industry that they're selling to. And we need to be really mindful of the fact that when we're looking for information, those really are go-to experts quite often who are invested in our industry, and having a little more time for them would behoove us all, I think, to benefit from that. So, and I also really like Sheriff Karamat, who came on from PCMA with Claire. And the small steps are what makes big impacts. So I think that, we have many organizations. We were so lucky this year to have quite a lot of our industry associations on the show. And I look forward to continuing that in the next year as well, because I think it's great to hear from those perspectives of, again, people who are really invested in the people in our industry and how we can grow forward. I know we've got advocacy coming up next year and some things like that, which are going to be super interesting. So hard to pick just one. Those are some of my top.
Ooh, that's a good list. I'm just trying to keep up with you guys and all the awesome lists of episodes. Alex, let's hit it with your favorites.
So Tahira actually mentioned one of my favorites, episode 113, the e-gaming events revolution. This is one of those episodes where I mentioned that I was live tweeting and not actually hosting, which was so great because it was a topic that I was really interested in. And I learned so much. It's a great episode. If you're unfamiliar with e-gaming events It's a great episode to go watch, 113. There's so much that we can learn from what they're doing and how they engage with their attendees. That was one episode that really struck me as something new and different that not many people that I talked to in the industry have been talking about. So that was a great episode. Episode 120. This was one of those episodes that came about. Sometimes we schedule these, 6 months in advance, and sometimes there's just a topic that really needs to be discussed now, and we can't wait 6 months to talk about it. And that was episode 120 and talking about the Me Too movement. We had Sarah Solomon and Courtney Stanley on that episode, who were just named to co-chair the Meeting Professionals International Women's Committee. And that topic was so important, and it was so important to hear from their perspective. They had just talked at MPIWEC about this. They had just done a session, but to share what they were working on and what they were hearing in the industry, I think it was a really, really great episode, and one that was super topical, which we don't get to do that often because we schedule these so far in advance, but that just happened to fall into our laps, and we were able to do it, and they were available. And for me, that was a really special episode that we did this year. after school special episode. And then I really liked the behind the scenes at Inbound. That is an event I always list as one of my favorite events. Episode 119. I think when Will and I went into that episode, we kind of had an expectation for what we thought that episode was going to end up being like, and it just was something completely different.
Ended up being totally different.
In a really, really good way, though. I think we learned a lot about how they go about curating their content, which was really fascinating to me because they do content so well. And that's not what we were expecting. We were expecting to hear, how do you throw such a great big event? And it was like, whoa, tell us more about these speakers and how you get this and how you decide to have, this keynote versus that keynote and all these people. So that's a really great episode to go back and watch. That's episode 119. And then the PCMA episode 134 that we did, I really enjoyed kind of talking about trends in the industry and what's going on in the industry. I think that's something that we don't talk about very often. I think we're focused on one topic all the time, so getting to kind of expand that a bit was nice. We will probably have some other industry associations on the show this year. I believe we have some
good
scheduled. I won't spill yet who we have planned, but it's a good one.
Well, there's the obvious that, you do now have a member of the site executive as a host. So every week you'll have some industry.
I don't think we're going to have him on. We don't know anybody there.
Hashtag spoiler alert. And then, one of my favorite episodes, and I'm a little biased because I worked with the guy and we just did it, was episode 140 with Paul Winston. It was just supposed to be me and Paul, and last minute I was like, Will, you got to be on this episode. If you don't know Paul, just co-host with me. And we were talking about these mega events, and Paul has just so much industry experience. We actually found out after the show that Brandt actually went on some crazy trip with Paul and knew Paul. He didn't even realize Paul was going to be on the show.
Yeah, that was one of those weeks where the day job got mixed in and Brandt was not paying attention to what was going on in the show. And afterward, I'm looking at the list going, oh, I know Paul. And I didn't even realize he was a guest on the show.
But I think those kind of episodes, I'd love to see more of that, where it's really, when we talk about event icons, this guy has done it all. And it's really nice to hear not even so much tips, but just like great stories. And I think we can learn so much from great storytellers. I think we as event organizers, we are telling stories. We're telling our event story. And so to get to hear these stories from someone who's been in the industry for so long, I love that episode. I thought that was great.
Well, yeah. Awesome. I almost want to just skip the question and not answer it because I literally, you guys named like almost every episode this year because it didn't leave much for me. But one episode that you guys didn't name that I really enjoyed, I just have the list in front of me because it's, to be honest, there's so much that happens in a year. I sometimes blur the years together too. But one of my favorite episodes was the Click episode we did with Pix Mob with Charles and Victor. The best part about it was that we did the episode. I went in again, like kind of the expectation shattering. You think you know what it's going to be about, and then you end up learning a lot about it. And then I went to C2 itself, the actual event, and saw it in action. And I remember meeting up with Charles in real life, IRL, and, you know, being like, dude, that episode didn't even capture half of what you guys are capable of. So it was awesome to get to have the Click guys come down again for IMAX, and we got to highlight a little bit more about the technology. But that was really, really cool episode. That is episode 106. If someone wants to drop it in the chat, since I'm not typing right now, we'll get into that. I really love doing episodes with Brandt. When we got to do like our cybersecurity episode stuff on the road, like Brandt and I are kindred souls in so many ways. So him and I can just talk for hours. Thank God we record most of it. And then as far as like other really surprising episodes that I was really mind blown about was the court episode we had as well, and talking about furniture. It's a topic that's not really sexy. It's not really exciting, but those gals had so many quotable things. I remember the post show, there was a list of all the quotes and which one was going to get the video and which one was going to get to show up. And they were just full of great quotes. And that was really exciting. And that was something new that we've been doing this year. Is if you didn't know, you don't follow Endless on Instagram or any other social channels. If you're just in a black hole, apparently, we also take all the quotes and clips from all the episodes and share them on social afterwards. So I'm going to say something super duper profound and boom, it's going to go totally viral, viral across the internet. So that was one where it was really, really exciting. But yeah, a lot of really great episodes this year, guys. So much good stuff. And I'm just looking at 2019 schedule, which some of it's actually public since you can go to event-icons.com and see the schedule as it's getting published. But there's so many ideas in here too that are about to get dropped and confirmed that every year I think is the best year yet of Event Icons. So yeah.
I just want to interrupt real quick. So we were talking about how awesome Rokan is, and but before I had a chance to cut and paste that link, he already had it in the chat. So I was like,
boom,
he beat me to it. So thanks, Rokan.
No worries. So what
Stats.
should we move on to next? Stats.
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 I want stats.
Episodes do the most
We
successful.
want stats. We want stats.
So this is like also a slight award show, I feel like, sometimes, of who had the most popular episodes of the year. So I have all the stats in front of me. What was interesting this year is we really diversified a lot of the platforms we were broadcasting to. So, for example, maybe only 2 months ago, we switched to now having a hosted player for you to join the chat on a website. No more downloaded software, no downloading Zoom. We also made some big strides. We got in Spotify. We're now on every Home Assistant, Google Home, Alexa, all that sort of stuff. I could say that word because don't have one in this household, thank God. And so we're everywhere. But so getting all these stats is really interesting to combine down. But there's definitely some leaders in each pillar, which I thought that I look at the most popular episode and it'd be the same across all platforms. But it turns out every platform has a different favorite episode, apparently. So I'm going to let you guys ask me, and I'll ask me questions, and then I'll tell you guys the information on what I can find. So ask me what episodes you guys want to hear about.
I want to know what was the top most watched episode of the whole year.
Okay, so
no warm up, just
No warm up. I want to go for the goals.
No softball questions for Will on this one. Which one was most interesting? What's interesting is the main pillars, the most watched ways of the show. So everyone knows the most watched ways is obviously there's the blog where we host the video, the resources, everything like that. There's the podcast itself, which goes to traditional podcasting platforms, Pocket Cast, iTunes, everything like that. And then the third way that it definitely gets reached is YouTube. So those are kind of the main pillar platforms. I'm going to talk about blog and podcast since those are actually twice as popular as YouTube. For obvious reasons, right? So let's start with the blog. So what's interesting is this is one that we have not talked about being one of our favorite episodes, but is by far the winner on the blog of the most watched episode, and including engagement rate as well, is the episode we had on best LinkedIn and Facebook groups with David Adler, Lofty, and Brittany on that episode, talking about like what it takes to have a great Facebook and LinkedIn group, why you should be joining these groups, what are the best groups that you love, all that sort of stuff. By far the winner on most watched. I'm guessing the reason why is because we linked to all the groups below as well. So a lot of people were going back to the blog to watch the episode and learn about the groups, so then click on them and then join them as well. And then there's a lot of on here that are really interesting as well. So, for example, obviously 2018 event trends, top episode as well on the blog, because obviously we're highlighting all those trends as well. But I think we talked about this last year, but the number one most popular episode of last year is number 3 this year, which is the episode 37 from season 1, year 1, which is talking about what do event management schools look like? What does the future of educating event planners kind of look like? And that is an absolutely awesome episode. And then other obvious ones, IMEX episode is up there as well. And then really, really crazily, the episode on brain dates is like soaring up the charts and is in the top 5, even though that episode only happened, 4 episodes ago or so. So that's really, really interesting. So there you go. Some stats on the blog. All right, let's talk about the podcast. And this is completely different list. You would think that this is like all of a sudden like a completely, it's just wild. All right, so number 1 most downloaded podcast episode of all time. And what's interesting is the video podcast and the audio podcast relate very similarly. So you would always think it's the most recent episode as well, because the way a lot of people download podcasts, they always just download the newest one. And as we get more subscribers, we'd have more. But this is mind-blowing. Sorry, I'm just so excited reading over these stats, like nerding over it. Number 1 episode download on the podcast is the PCMA episode. Almost, actually, no, let's say it's like considered compared to number 10 on the list. It is almost double in downloads. Number 2, that's episode 134, by the way, as you guys mentioned earlier. Next episode 132. Which is about transportation and event transportation. So we're talking about moving large groups of people, all that jazz. Episode 133 is in 3rd place on the podcast with the furniture, the court episode that we talked about. And then number 4, IMEX 2018 episode. And then also the complete number 5 is the complete guide to nonprofit planning, episode 136. So right in kind of that we obviously had a lot of listeners joining in, I think, and during that time, but a lot of people really interested in those topics. And I think the reason why is we got really nitty gritty with the topics and really tactical as far as planning goes. So there you go.
What I think is I actually had the not-for-profit on my list. And I totally didn't mention it, but I thought that was an excellent episode. Audrey, obviously that is something that's really near and dear to her heart. The guests were amazing. And I thought that there was some really, really fantastic things that came out of that episode. And what I really liked was, just all of their thinking around that, to do a great not-profit event is strategy plus heart. And, we have so many, there's obviously thousands or millions of events that are fundraisers and cause related throughout the year. And we also have a lot that are related to our own industry and how do we grow and take care of our own industry and, things that happen at many, many events. So I would say, honestly, is a total must-watch episode.
Absolutely.
So do we have any, I was going to say, do we have any speculation on why we think those were the most popular episodes?
I do.
Everybody's thoughts.
I do.
Hit us, Alex.
Now, correlation is not the same as causation. However, those 2 platforms, their number 1 episodes happen to be ones that I hosted.
Touche, Alex. All right, guys. Well, Brandt, Will, and Tahira are no longer guests of EventIcons. Welcome to the Alex Show, everyone.
I was not the only host of those episodes, but I was one of the co-hosts of both.
All right. Okay.
I don't like listening to me, so that's fair.
And I think that happened last year too, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
I'm sensing a competition brewing.
I know. Why are we not working harder as hosts to try to get more people to tune into our episodes?
People just like this space.
I like a little friendly
So we're
competition.
gonna post a poll in the chat. Which host do you like more? Keep in mind, I run this place, so if you don't vote for me, no more episode.
Nothing's gonna happen if you don't vote for Will.
That's true. That's true. I'll just cry. You just won't see me anymore as a host.
Speaking of the chat, we have a question coming in.
All right. Let's hit it.
I'm assuming this is kind of it's for Will, but all of us, I'm assuming. So, any further consideration for creating another platform for the community to connect beyond Facebook? For those of us who've kicked Facebook to the curb,
I think I know who's asking that question, and that person's holding me accountable because I promised that I would do that. I'm going to promise on air we're going to get a LinkedIn group started because obviously we talked about Facebook, LinkedIn groups. LinkedIn's a great professional network to join in, or I'm participating in a lot of LinkedIn groups. And with the revival of LinkedIn over the last 2-3 years, I'm going to get a LinkedIn group started for you guys. If you are subscribed right now, which obviously if you're watching us live, you are subscribed, fantastic. You're going to get an email. We'll send the invite out to all of you. However, if you're watching this on the podcasting network, YouTube, or just tuning in on the blog, you got to subscribe to get that invite. It'll be invite only to those who subscribe to the podcast. So go ahead and check it out.
That's been kind of interesting. This LinkedIn, like you say, has had a bit of a renaissance where I'm seeing a lot more engagement there on posts and things like that over the course of the last 6 months.
Totally. Video content's crushing it too on LinkedIn.
They've been introducing a lot of new features too, and I think it's worth noting that with Microsoft taking them over, their app has gotten better, and then also people are fleeing certain other social platforms and for various reasons, and they need someplace to go.
Fleeing seems a bit harsh. Fleeing, no, get me out. Where are people going? So let's talk about that. So we know people are listening to podcasts. We know they're watching things, but where are people connecting now?
LinkedIn,
social media guru.
LinkedIn for sure. With Tumblr's demise.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, they just got lost like half their people who were using their platform. I won't mention why. You can Google.
You can go.
Be careful Googling it.
Yeah.
Just
NSFW.
Just click the news tab.
Yeah.
But I'm actually reading that a lot of people are now going back to their Twitters that they had abandoned. So that'll be an interesting development to see how that works out. People are looking for new platforms. So we might see a new platform kind of erupt from this downfall of Tumblr. So I'll keep you guys posted to see where people are going. But Instagram has blown up considerably.
For sure.
With Instagram stories, it's not just posting photos anymore. And so people are connecting that way. There's a lot of, because there's the instant messaging capabilities there too. I think people are taking advantage of that. But yeah, I think Instagram is kind of blown up. It's funny because Facebook owns Instagram, but people don't really associate the two with each other in that way. When something bad happens on Facebook, they're not dooming Instagram.
We love it. And WhatsApp.
And WhatsApp, especially for international audiences, is great. So people aren't leaving the internet; they're still connecting digitally. It's just a question of where and how often. And then I'm also reading that some people are disconnecting from social media. I read an interesting quote by someone who had kind of took a month hiatus and came back to social media, but said that they'd be posting a lot less frequently, that they realized that they were living for an audience and not for themselves. And I think there's something to be said there.
That's my life story.
We're in front of you guys every week. So I think there's absolutely something to be said for that. But yeah, so I think there are going to be changes in habits, social media habits, but it's worth watching. Even if you're unfamiliar with kind of why these things are happening, you don't need to really know that, unless you're in my case, my shoes, where you need to be foreseeing trends. But I think even if you aren't a social media expert, you can see these things happening.
It's interesting, as I sort of enjoyed my sabbatical this year. During part of that, so I traveled for a long time, and I had a lot of really interesting work actually that came my way, and interesting conversations and ways of connecting with people that simply wouldn't have existed without social. So during that time, I was speaking at a conference, and there was a woman who was in a session who had built a blog post up over 2 years to have 300 followers because she didn't believe in social media. And it was very interesting to me because she was okay with that number, but wanted to figure out how to grow. And truly at this point, the only way to grow that, I would suggest, is to get a little bit more active on social, because we're still looking for information there. What I loved was some of the personal connections and the way that we're now able to extend the conversation. So we might meet somebody at a conference. Now we're connected on LinkedIn. Now we can have a continued conversation. And part of that conversation might be, seeing each other's posts and kind of where things are at, or it might be a messaging conversation. But it's super interesting how we can now use social to extend our business conversations, and that there is validity in that. It's not just, I'm on Facebook. So.
Well, great example of how we all connected essentially is that's how we all met. And obviously we talked about how tuning in show, getting you guys on the show as well. But if it wasn't for the fact that I shared a link on social to watch the show, Alex would have never tuned in, and we would have never started that conversation. And same with Brandt. Brandt would have never seen the tweets of what I was doing, and vice versa with you too. So it definitely, I think it has some power for sure. I think we just can't look at it just a shallow level of where it goes. You have to build deeper. So I want to talk a little bit about the future as everyone mutes themselves because no one else wants to talk apparently. I want to talk about the future of EventIcons since we only have about 10 minutes left and what it's going to look like for the next year. So maybe each of us wants to kind of go down the line and talk a little bit about what we're excited about for the next year and where we see the future of the next year, and maybe some big goals what we're working on, since you guys pretty much drive the show just as well as I do. So Alex, you want to talk a little bit about what you're excited about?
Yeah. So one thing we were actually just recently talking about right before the show is some of these bigger names that you hear about, our mentors and icons and people out there that we look up to who we kind of think are long shots. We are in discussion with reaching out to them, and the worst thing they can say is no. But we're going to be trying to get some bigger names on the show, maybe people who you're more familiar with, maybe some people a little bit outside of the events industry, but can still relate to and teach us something about how we plan our events. I think another thing is getting more planners to be guests on the show. I think, these behind the scenes episodes with Inbound and C2 Montreal and stuff like that, I think those are really good episodes to find out, how are the other event planners doing it. So getting event planners of big events that you've probably heard of onto the show. I think that's one of our plans as well. So yeah, I think that's, two of our big guest goals for the year.
I love it. What do you think is on the horizon for where social will go to for EventIcons?
I think we're going to keep doing more things with Instagram stories, Instagram TV, making sure that you are able to get your fill of the show anywhere that you want to. I think also just taking more bite-sized pieces of it. We understand that, an hour show, you can't always commit to listening to or watching the entire thing, which is why we have people who comb through every episode and take out the really important stuff that you need to hear. So if you're not able to commit an hour every week, we want to make sure that you're still getting the important information.
Yes.
I'm gonna for 12-minute mini episodes. I just decided that just right now.
Well, something that we did, interestingly enough, and I admit that I'm in charge of this project, but if you're not part of the Facebook group and then the soon-to-be LinkedIn group, we've been doing Event Icons Extended, where we do interviews beyond that. A little bit of things, logistical things on my end to make it all happen, because they're obviously in person, but we're going to see a lot more of that sort of stuff too soon. Content sprawling outside of Event Icons as well. So, Tahira, do you want to chat a little bit?
Spin-off content.
Spin-off content. Like, it's like when there's Batman and now there's a show about Robin. We're going to create shows about Robin. Boom. All right, Tahira, tell us a little bit about where you see the future of the show going, maybe about content and what you're excited about.
I'm now excited about the 12-minute episodes and the Event Icons shows. So I'm totally distracted now. I've squirreled on you. I think that the reason that I joined the show is because I liked what you were doing. I liked the way that we are able to do in-depth interviews with people. I love the ongoing content and the mix of content that is provided. And again, because all of us are working in industry, we are very focused on what is hot and important right now. So while we're booking 6 months out, it really is, everything is topical. So, as much as we'd love to have an episode about, the latest, greatest papaya juices, we're not. We're talking about the things that matter to the event industry and really taking away solid takeaways. And every single show, there's so many, I'm going to use Will's words, knowledge bombs that are dropped. And I just look forward to really just seeing that continue to grow. And I'm so excited about the list we already have for the first 6 months of the year. 6 months of the year, you guys, already booked. But also hearing from people about what they want. And the other thing that I'm hoping that we continue to do more of is more live shows, because I think that it's the power of events is that we meet face to face. The power of the Event Icon shows happening live is when we can talk to people face to face, because we, as much as Zoom is face to face, not only do we have different conversations, but we can have those really topical, top of mind conversations when we're doing a live show that really covers the most current happenings. So if you have an event industry show coming up and you think, what a good idea, I'd never thought about having a podcast for my show, what a great opportunity to have, 2 or 3 of us, even if, we can't all be there, to be on site, be live. And then also the other thing that's happened with the live shows, which I think is really terrific, is we are all speakers, and we're all speakers on very topical industry issues. And so to be able to combine sharing some of that knowledge in those formal and informal and interactive settings, as well as to have the benefit of having the show live, where we've also had this opportunity to talk to the organizers of the show. When we can sit down with Karina Bauer and, Angie with Connect and Doug, who's this, CEO of Saris at Connect. Those are not opportunities that you're always going to get. So I'd love to see more of that continue.
I think that's a really good point. That was one thing I'm really excited for, is a lot of the live content that you talked about. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but something you talked about too is us all speaking together. This isn't really Icons related, but one thing we're doing is collaborating between all of us as hosts to create content as well. Brandt and I have this awesome talk we do on in-house versus third-party AV suppliers, and we've been rocking that across the circuit these last couple months. And then me and Alex are working on some content as well, as far as like live streaming and things like that. But one of the things I'm really excited about, I have it like all set up right over here, and I was trying to figure out a way I could use it, but even though it's excessive, but we're going to be bringing the production value of these live shows up a lot more as well. Something that I think will make it a very special treat for anyone who watches it beyond just the single camera angle. That's a little bit of a tease for you guys. But one big thing that I'm really focusing on this year is how can we bring the production value of this show up even more? One thing we're talking to a lot of guests about is like, hey guys, make sure that you have beyond just the AirPods as you're listening to. Obviously, we are at the mercy of their audio quality, but we know you as the audience, you don't want to listen to an hour conversation with someone using crappy headphones. So we're trying to do that for you guys to make it even better, which is something I'm super duper excited for, is bringing that production value up even more. Brandt, tell me a little bit about what you are super duper excited for in this next year.
Well, one of the disadvantages of going last is that things always get said. So I want to reiterate a couple of things. And One is, like Alex said, we're trying to reach out of the industry a little bit, broaden our horizons to folks that we think will be topical and, of interest and use, but aren't necessarily the usual suspects when it comes to the industry. I've got one that I've been cooking on for about 6 months now that may or may not happen 6 months into next year, that I'm excited about, who is someone who I heard on a different podcast, totally unrelated to our industry, but I think it's going to really bring some insight. So that continuing to look, and I mentioned it kind of earlier, and I would love to see some more, personal growth episodes and business growth episodes, and more about, the making of the sausage, the behind the scenes stuff of how we can grow this industry. Here, doesn't like my metaphor, but that's all right. That's fine. How the behind the scenes stuff that we do, in our industry to grow the actual industry and the actual business side, I think would be something that I would love to see a lot more of. And then, again, touching back on what Alex was saying, going to those true icons, those people of like the mega events. I think we've been slowly stepping that up. We had Hugh Forrest from South by Southwest this year. We were looking at the list as we were putting together some of our partnership proposals. We were putting together the list of folks that have been on the show already. And it's like, wow, that's a pretty good list. And continuing to ramp that up and step that up into the 2019 and beyond, I think is amazing. And then I've been authorized to tease that the content team at Endless is continuing to expand. We're not just necessarily going to do this show, but in addition to EventIcons, what I always forget the name. Beyond EventIcons Beyond, EventIcons 2 Electric Boogaloo. We're going to be extended. That's what we're going to be potentially doing some spin-off podcasts as well, some additional content. So keep your eyes out for that.
We're going to be the BuzzFeed of events.
And oh my goodness, I just realized what time it is. Sorry, I was yammering on and on and on.
No, it's okay. You heard it here first. I think I'm authorized to say is that we're going to be launching some more in-depth podcast content. So we're doing more video content, obviously, but we got another podcast probably coming up, and we're working on that now. So I don't know what it looks like. It's going to be awesome, though, because, we're doing it. Yeah, let's wrap up. You want to? Who wants to bring this puppy home? Now that we've talked about the future, let's start to move into the future, shall we? And this is when everyone starts muting their microphones. Nose goes. That's the nose goes sign of podcasting. But Brandt, do you want to wrap it up?
Are we just doing the closing, or are we going to do anything else? Is there anything else we want to talk about?
I think we wrap it up. I think we take it home.
Yeah, and I do just want to say how. Thank you to Will for putting this together. I want to say thank you to all of you out there. I say it every week that I'm doing the closing, but it really is this. Yeah, we can all sit around and talk to each other, but it's so much more fun when you guys are there in the chat room and engaging and asking questions. And, that's really what it should be all about, is about your questions, not about our questions. So really, please do continue to drop in, continue to say hi. And I love seeing the folks that we see. We're starting to get regulars, and I love that. And I'm just so proud of what we're putting together here. And I can't wait to look forward to 2019. And with that, I do want to just say thank you. Thank Will. Thank Tahira. Thank Alex. Thank you guys for joining me. Thanks so much for being my wonderful co-host. Thanks you, Audrey, for being such a wonderful co-host on so many of the shows that we've done together. You will be missed, and we look forward to having you on as a guest as often as you possibly can. We want to remind everybody that EventIcons is recorded live each Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can watch behind the scenes out on Facebook Live. And then the show is released the following Tuesday on iTunes, Pocket Casts, Stitcher, whatever your favorite podcast app. If there is a platform that you want to listen to us on or watch us on and we're not there, you need to tell us so that we can make sure that we're there. But of course, we really want you to join us at event-icons.com along with show notes, links, and resources shared. That is the best way to join us live because you're going to get the embedded viewer that Will put together, and it's amazing, and it all works now, and it's fantastic, and we love it when technology works. And then you also get to watch it, and then you get the chat right there, so you have to keep it all on one screen. You don't have to be flipping between different screens. You don't have to install anything. It's amazing. It's the best way to join us. And you can get those questions directed right at our guests immediately. We want to know what you think. Use the hashtag EventIcons on Twitter. Join the EventIcons Facebook group, the soon-to-be EventIcons LinkedIn group as well. Let us know who the icons of the industry are that you want to see. And who you want to be on the show. And somebody's sending me something in the chat. What I'm not sure what you're alluding to there, Alex. So did you want to throw whatever it is that
you might see in 2019 shirts that look like this. And it's backwards. But it does say
no, it's right side up for us.
Oh, is it right side up? Okay. It says I am an icon of the industry.
You said mention what's coming up in March. I was like, what's coming up?
What's going on in March? Merch.
I meant merch. That was a typo. But you might see some shirts, some stickers, things like that, so that you too can tell everyone you're an icon of the events industry.
That's right, and I think we've been talking about doing some prizes and stuff as well as we look forward into the next year. So we'll tease that as well. Lots of teases in this episode. Lots of teases. So you'll just have to join us in 2019. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week on EventIcons.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #EventIcons. To catch the transcription and all of the resources mentioned, head to www.helloendless.com/blog. This week's episode will be posted and available by next Tuesday. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway and join the social conversation. Sponsored by Little Bird Told Media. Just tag your post with #EventIcons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on #EventIcons.